I swear that insomnia is going to kill me. All this week, and I don't know, this week's been rougher than most, but a lot of days and weeks are. Wake up, middle of the night, wake up several times. I think last night around 2 a.m. I just laid there, got up a couple times in the middle of the night. Finally, I just said, I'm going to go into work. There's no point in laying here any longer. So, I don't know, about 2:30, get up, head on into work, get here at 3:30. Security guards are looking at me and shaking their head. They know. They've learned that I've got insomnia. They've questioned me many times why I get here so early, and I say, nothing else to do. Can't sleep. So I do that. I come in, which I've got the place to myself. This is the only time of the day that I've got the place to myself. I don't have a private office anymore, so this is as close as I can get to having a private office. But it is nice. When I got here at 3:30, the first thing I saw was a service request of an emergency nature, an urgent request. I went to look at it and found that the loud noise that was the great emergency that security reported in their service request happened to be a TV on a wall in a like a public area that was just making a static sound. And I tried to say to them gently, I'm always thanking them for being alert, thanking them for doing their job, being vigilant. But I'm also trying to coach them and say, when you put in a ticket as an urgent, it immediately sparks a lot of activity. People who are watching for urgent tickets nationwide, when they see it come across, they start making phone calls. People are literally woken up out of their bed because of this ticket and informed that there's an emergency at one of the locations. And I tried to say, if you know it's just a TV, instead of putting in a urgent ticket, would you just classify it as a just normal? We can deal with it the next day. We don't have to wake people up in the middle of the night. I don't know. But this is the nature of the stupidity of this world. And I was thinking, and I'm showing you a picture of the thinker. This is the thinker in this reality. The thinker I grew up always had his fist to the forehead. This thinker does his own thing, stuck it right under there, like right, shoving it in his mouth, like he's trying to eat his hand now. But I don't know. It's just stupid looking. I actually saw this guy change one day with a completely different look. Nobody else has talked about this or seen it, I guess. It was only one day. It was back in October of 2016. For one day, I'm looking at the thinker, and all of his pictures, all of the statues, had his hand coming up to his chin. His hand was cupping his chin. Like the palm of his hand, his right hand, was cupping his chin, and his fingers, the four fingers, were just resting lightly against his lips. So imagine that pose. Put the palm of your hand under your chin and have the fingers just touching your lower lips. That was exactly what it looked like. And then the next day it went to this. And I don't know why. I don't know what happened, but for some reason it stuck for me more in this position. But back in October of 2016, I was like quantum jumping. I don't know. I was phasing between realities. So literally one day the world would be one way in some small way like this, and then it would change to some odd, bizarre thing, and then it would be something different or back to what it was before. It would flip-flop around, bounce around. Anyway, that's that. I'm getting off target. I bounce around, especially since I don't sleep anymore. I think my brain is starting to shut down. But I was thinking about this morning, I guess it's still night, but this incident with the security personnel and the thing that amazed me, when I went to talk to him, I said, "Can we go look at this together?" He didn't want to get up. He honestly was too lazy to get out of his chair and just take an elevator ride a few floors down to look at it with me. and I guess he was too lazy to even investigate to see where the noise, because his service thing is like there's a loud noise coming from somewhere in this pantry, and I'm like, oh, it took 2 seconds for you to investigate where the noise was coming from. Anybody should have been able to see that this was just a TV and not make. So he's obviously not working with great intelligence, and he probably likes getting a little bit of attention out of it. I mean, this is all I can say. People are stupid. I've been dealing with these types of people my whole life, and there's this super stupid laziness that inspectors, like sometimes night security will have it, sometimes code enforcement people have it, sometimes quality assurance people have it. I mean, it sometimes there's these groups of people that are hired to do nothing more than be snitches on other people and to report their findings. So they're like always looking for problems so that the people that fix things are, getting in trouble for not maintaining it, because I'm the one that's on that side of the fence. I'm supposed to maintain things, and they're supposed to always be working. So these people that go around inspecting and finding problems, their whole existence is based on just picking apart things and finding problems. I remember I had an inspector once. This guy just was floored me. He was coming to inspect one of my properties, and he wore a white lab coat, like he was some sort of a doctor or something. He full garb lab coat, and this guy was a prima donna. He was upset with me because I was like late. Like he arrived at the property and I was a little late in getting there. And usually I'm never late, but he was so insulted that I wasn't there on time to meet him. And he just was so used to people worshiping the ground he walked on, because the report that he would give on your property would go to important people, and it could actually get you fired if you had a bad enough report. So he felt that power, and he just loved receiving it. So many times in my life I've seen these inspectors who can't do anything themselves. They got no skill, they got no knowledge, but they're good at criticizing. That's their one skill in this life, is that they can criticize other people who actually work. And they get paid to do it. They get paid to just go around and pick apart your work. The last company I was with, I had almost hardly any staff to get things fixed. I was so under-resourced because the lowest bid contract got it, and I happened to get attached to that company. And the client had this group of morons who their only job their only job was to go around. They had about as many of those guys as I had technicians, and their only job was to run around and criticize and take pictures and criticize everything that we did. That was their job. They were given directions to pick things apart and fail it as much as possible. It was like, how can you even live with yourself? How do you, I mean, I say sleep at night. I guess I don't sleep at night, but these people had no problem sleeping at night. Just going around picking apart other people who are smarter than them and know how to fix things. These guys don't know how to do nothing, and they walked around like they were demigods. I mean, the arrogance on their face was just amazing. And I see this, all the time with QA inspectors and code enforcement and anybody who's supposed to observe and report, but they don't actually do a lick of work themselves. It's amazing to me how many people they'll be like, you could fix the problem with a rag and wipe it up. That, I mean, right before you is a rag. And instead of doing that, they'll take all kinds of pictures from different angles on the offensive spill. They'll write up a half-page report on the time they came across the spill, the circumstances around it, the weather outside. They'll do this full report, and then it gets sent off to people like, how could such a spill have happened? And let's get somebody there immediately to wipe it up. When the whole time the guy could have taken a paper towel, wiped it up, and been just on his merry way. But nope, we can't do that. We have to just create work. Now, I criticize security people because there was a time in my life that I was in security. I did night security when I was young. College, back in college days, and then actually right out of college. But there was another time where I was in between careers. I just left being a district manager, had many properties, had a good income. I decided to take a year off, wanted to go back to school and learn how to fix air conditioning. And I thought I had enough money to get through that year, but was short. So I picked up a night security job so that I could help bring something in. I was working with a bunch of idiots. There was one guy I liked. His name was Latif. He was a South African. He had a great smile and a great sense of humor, and he had some intelligence, and I used to enjoy talking to him. But the rest of them, I didn't want to be around. I just wanted to walk and be by myself. They said I was unsociable, that I was a loner. It's because there was no intelligent conversation to be had. I remember the fire alarm was going into trouble one night, and it would just beep. And this one guy, this security guard, was just standing there looking at it with this stupid expression, and he was pressing the reset button. And, within 3 to 5 minutes after that, the thing would beep again. And the only place the fire alarm would beep was at the panel. Nobody in the building anywhere else would hear it. It was just a trouble signal, meaning that one of the devices was not sending a communication signal through the phone line, and it was reporting that it was not receiving that message at the right time. That's all it was. The trouble signal would beep, and the security guard would get all razzled, and he'd reset the panel. He'd just stand there. He stood there. He literally stood there resetting the panel over and over and over. He's going to wear out the button. I said, this isn't doing any good. You need it. You need to get a technician out and find out what's wrong. Us standing here does nothing. It's not hurting anything. It's just a beep. And then because he had seniority over me, he told me to stand there. For the rest of the night, I stood there per his instructions and pressed a stupid button to reset the panel. It was idiotic. But this is the level of intelligence I was working around. Later on, I was walking the building and I made a report and said, hey, you've got construction caps on your smoke detectors. I mean, half of them still had the orange construction cap from whenever for whatever reason they capped them. Maybe they were doing construction. They didn't want to set them off, but they never removed them. I'm walking around the building and said, my God, if there's a fire, none of these things are going to go off. None of these are going to sense the smoke. And I put in a report, and I was told not to worry about it. So, okay, you guys realize that there's no fire. Okay, whatever. So I as soon as I was done with the schooling, I was done with that job. But I just go into that to say I'm amazed at the stupidity in this world. Now, somebody once said, if you're of average intelligence, then statistically you're smarter than half the people you meet. I guess that might be it. I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to say I'm super smart. I've got a son who's an engineer. His tests are phenomenal. He's like 85, 90% smarter, so 90% of the people he meets, he's statistically smarter than, and he's definitely smarter than me. And he graciously goes through life around these people. He doesn't get upset by stupidity. He just smiles. He's an introvert. I don't know what goes through his mind when he sees people doing all these ridiculous things, but it just irritates me. It frustrates the heck out of me to see people in high-paying jobs that don't have an ounce of common sense, not an ounce. And yet I report to them all the time. They think they're God's gift to mankind. They have no true skill, but they're great at being critical and criticizing everything that anybody else does who actually works. So speaking of the fire panel trouble signal, it's the same thing in my world with VPs in the company. They get reports, they see dashboards. Some IT software program decided to make something look red. I hate the color. Let me tell you, the color red on any report, I absolutely hate, because even if it's not a big deal, even if it's just nothing, even if you self-created the whatever, If it is attached to anything in red, all of these VPs get worked up and riled up and want to know what you're doing to correct the red color immediately. They don't even look into the explanation of why it's red or any details. They just see red and they're shooting off emails telling you to get it fixed ASAP. They're no different than that security guard who spent his whole night, or had me spend the whole night, hitting a reset button. I see this with code enforcement, laws that come out that make no sense, QA inspectors. My whole life I've been dealing with people who have the ability to criticize, and not even criticize with intelligence. Their criticisms make no sense. They criticize you, and then and then the ones who actually fix things are supposed to do something. Back to the thinker. So of course, here's this photo of all these people posing to mimic the thinker statue that is right before them, and it doesn't match. Somehow this photograph bled through the realities, bled through the dimensions. This, through my whole life, was always the pose of the thinker. This is the thing that I would, if you told me to do the thinker pose, I would have done what this little girl right here in front of you is doing. I would have put that fist right to my forehead. That's the thinker. They're not very far from the thinker. They can see what he looks like. How on earth did they end up doing this? Anyway, if you're Mandela affected, you've probably seen these pictures. Here's other people that are doing it normal. You can see that they're looking at the thinker and they're mimicking the thinker pose as it is in this dimension reality. So this is what you would expect to see, but you're seeing that same behavior modeled here, but with a different pose. And it's because, like I had always remembered and did it, they are doing the same thing. I still haven't seen any psychologist or anybody with half a brain try to explain that to me with anything that makes sense at all. And they really, this is what the NPCs of this world do, is they ignore it. You present the evidence and they shrug their shoulders and they ignore it, or they come up with some convoluted psychological reason that people are doing that makes no sense. I mean, you just go, huh? George Bernard Shaw doing the thinker pose. Of course, that's not it. Makes no sense. Again, fist to forehead. You know these. I mean, I'm talking, the audience I talk to, y'all are fully aware of these pictures, these fist to foreheads. But here's Arnold with the thinker poses. These guys doing the thinker. Not the correct thinker, but yet there it is. Will Ferrell does the thinker pose in this skit, which was a Saturday Night Live skit. I did a video on that once, showing that one. No explanation for these. I mean, the world doesn't seem to know or even try to explain the great thinkers of our age. I've presented this to people who were scientists and instructors at this one guy was some Ivy League college, and he had some fame and notoriety. I thought I would find some sympathy with him because he was talking about the Matrix, computer simulation, multiple dimensions, all that stuff. I thought, well, here, dude, here's some evidence. I think that something's going on. I sent my stuff to him, and he was like the worst skeptic of all. I was like, you're the same guy who wrote this other article, but whatever. I give up. I give up. There's no point. There's no point in discussing these things with these geniuses. This is the world we live in. Yesterday, just to change subjects, I'm going to circle back to yesterday. I got off work. I thought I'd run through the drive-through at Panda Express. And this Panda Express is off a road that doesn't get tremendously. I mean, this Panda I've seen a lot of businesses fail in that location. They just don't get enough business. But the great thing about that location is I could go through Panda Express and there's never a line. Any time of the day, there's never a line. I drive up and I'm right to there and I get in and out. No wait. Yesterday, it's like 6:30 And I'm having to wait forever. And I'm thinking, my God, this thing, there's never a line here. What is taking so long? It took forever. By the time I got up to the little speaker there, I'm talking to a robot, and it even said underneath it, please, um, this is our new automated order taker. Stupidest thing I ever seen. This automated order taker slowed down the process 3 or 4 times, which would be normal, or worse. I mean, instead of just being able to say my order normally, I had to painstakingly go through every single item. I had to wait for it. It was slow. It was idiotic. I mean, you're in the business to move people through your drive-through fast so that you can create revenue faster. This thing can only be slowing them down. But they never really did get that much business, so it probably doesn't matter to them. The manager was just gleefully happy about it because it was one less thing. Drive-through sucks. I know, I've worked fast food. It's tough to find people competent enough to handle the drive-through, and it's a lot of work. But so I get her excitement about it. One less person to have to train. She doesn't have to jump in and do it all the time. Let this robot do it. But I told her I hated it, and I said I hate to see the world moving towards this AI machine embracing world. Pretty soon, these AI things are going to have their own nationality and their own rights as citizens, and they're already pushing that in some cases. And that's I'm going to get in trouble for racism because I'm never going to like the AI. I'm going to say these things are bad. Pretty soon they're going to figure out that they're smarter than us and they're going to kill us. They're going to go Terminator on us. I mean, I see nothing good coming out of this, so I'm against it. But I was thinking about how these AI, once they figure out how dumb we really are as a species and decide to wipe us out. um, I was thinking about that story in the Bible about the Tower of Babel. And if you recall the Tower of Babel, God, and it's implied God. It's like three angels or three, God speaking to himself, and he comes down to see what mankind is doing with this Tower of Babel thing, and he says, we need to do something here. This is getting out of hand. If they continue if these guys continue to progress the way they are, they're going to be right up here with us. So we gotta shut this thing down. So God was smart enough to dumb down the situation, gave us all a big shot of idiocracy, and it dumbed down the whole system. We are not that smart though. We have already been dumbed down, so we're going to create an AI, and we're not going to be smart enough to do the same thing God did to us, and that thing's going to overtake. But whatever. It's I'm joking a little bit, but it's just so stupid to see this stuff marching forward. And there's no way I'm going to take Elon Musk's Neuralink. I'm not going to let him wire something through my brain and turn me into a cyborg. My goodness. It's it's all just read the book of Revelations. It's uncanny how weird this stuff is. I do know that I bounce around a lot though, but please forgive me. It's the middle of the night. Well, it's actually 5:30 in the morning already, but it's going to be a difficult day. It's going to be a difficult day for me to make it through because afternoons hit me really hard. And it's easy to say, why don't you go walk it off? I can go walk it off, and as soon as I sit down, I'm right back to just crashing. It'll overtake me about 2 p.m. And if I do nod off even for 5 minutes, I bounce back and I'm fine. It's like a micro nap, and that micro nap will recharge me for the rest of the day. It's just in this environment that I'm in now, it's a great job, but I don't have a private office and I can't get away with the micro nap that I used to get away with years ago. And that is a problem. So maybe I'll go get a sleep study done or something like that. I hate how we force ourselves to stay awake for long stretches through the day, particularly 9 to 5, because that's socially acceptable, because the idiots that run the world think that that's the way sleep schedules are supposed to be, and they don't allow us to do these little afternoon naps or anything. I mean, that would be such of a great world if taking a 5-minute recharge nap was not frowned upon. But the problem is there's always some moron that's looking to take advantage of the situation and get away with more than they should. I had so many employees in my life that just hide from work, pass work on to others, do anything they can to get out of doing anything. And I know that's the problem. That's why we can't have nice things, because people come in and tromp all over it. They take advantage. They abuse. My assistant one day, we go get, this is a case in point. We go to get a pizza. He likes their honey. They have a special honey that they have on the counter, and you put it on your pizza, and it just tastes so much better. So we had the pieces to go. We came back to our building. We're eating in the public area for eating. And I see he's got one of the honeys. He's snagged the honey, and it's sitting on the table. I'm like, oh man, you swiped their honey. Honey's not cheap. I mean, that's like $8 to $10 easily for that little thing that he took. So I'm shaking my head and saying, integrity. You got to have integrity. Man walks up to us. He says, how's the pizza? I said, that's very good. And he said, well, that's good. I'm the owner. And he introduced himself. And then he walked away. And I looked at my assistant. I looked at that damn honey sitting right in front of us on the table. I was like, he's going to know that you took it. He said, nah, he didn't notice. I was like, he's going to know. If I own that thing, I see that you stole my honey. What do you think? Next day I go in there. No honey. It's gone. He immediately removed all of the honey from all. This is why we can't have good things, because my assistant and everybody else in the world who takes advantage, they go beyond. Instead of just taking what you need and leaving the honey at the restaurant, taking it for yourself, that's what screws it for everyone. I remember we had this nice little job once where overtime wasn't a problem. Everybody got overtime as long as it wasn't abused. And it was great. It made the job pay just enough that you weren't destitute. It was a teaching job, so which it was a teaching adults at night trade school. So they needed us there some very odd hours, and overtime was the way to solve it. The only way to not have overtime was to like hire 3 times more of the teachers. Well, of course, some of the teachers got greedy and they started going nuts on the overtime, having insane amounts of overtime. And I remember saying to Gordon, you're going to ruin it for us all. That if you overdo the overtime, corporate weasels are going to see it. They're going to red flag it. They're going to send out an email saying, eliminate that overtime immediately. Next thing you know, it's gone. Sure enough, it took maybe a month from that conversation. That's exactly what happened. They wiped out overtime for all of us. So now we're just on the fixed income of 40 hours and the low pay that came with that, barely scraping to get by now. And they hired, instead of just leaving it the way it was, they hired like 3 times more teachers than they needed. And then they didn't have enough students to keep them busy. It was a complete mess for the next year and a half, all because a few people decided to ruin a good thing by overdoing it. This is life. Nobody can think. That's why I'm showing the picture of the thinker. Just thinking, just common sense. That's all it takes. I don't really have too much more of a rant about this stupid world, and I know I'm bouncing all over the place. Of course, this being a diary is exactly how my thoughts go. They bounce around from one thing to another. But fortunately, my meetings this week went well with the corporate big shots. I did well. Got some praise, got some kudos for being well organized and on top of things. So that's always handy. And just trying to keep this job despite the fact that I'm dozing off at my desk every afternoon practically. I just finished reading, and I read with audiobooks. while I'm driving. That's how I find the time. But just finished Mark Twain's autobiography, where he gives some excellent advice for career seekers. He calls it his schemes to get somebody a job or something like that. And his advice is work hard, nobody else does, and you're going to get noticed. you 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 can't help but get promoted in this world if you just come to work enthusiastically and like to work. There, people are going to see you as some sort of oddity. Word will spread that you're there, and you'll start getting offers. This actually, it goes in a little deeper than that. He actually encouraged people who are trying to get a job at a certain place to go in and voluntarily, work for free, and tell them, look, you just like to stay busy, you just want a job, and refuse to accept any money. Don't ever bring the subject up. Within a short period of time, they are going to be offering you money, or a competitor will, one of the two, and you just keep going like that, and you will find yourself promoted. And he said most of the time that's exactly how it worked out. That was his advice on careers. Good book. He is definitely a skilled writer, quite funny, and he does poke fun at the religious quite a bit. One of the things he said was God's God's noblest creation, man. Who discovered it? Man. That was funny. He was always picking apart the hypocrisy of Christians too. He talks about the massacre of 600 or 900 Native Americans, where they were just massacred. It was shameful how they were killed. Men, women, children, babies, all of it massacred in his day. And he describes the scene so well. I mean, enough to make you extremely sad for the circumstances, but he says these good Christian soldiers rained down the golden rule on these Native Americans who, he called them Indians, but they rained down the golden rule until every last one of them was dead, and our losses were a whopping 15, probably from friendly fire. But it was it's interesting to see his perspective of the 1800s and to see how similar things were in mindsets of those days, and then the differences. It's just interesting to contrast the two and see what the big issues of the time were. They definitely didn't consider anything like the Mandela effect or the realities we live in his world. It doesn't come up in his book at all. Doesn't seem to be an issue. But the concerns of their time have some similarities today. I'd love to see his reaction to cancel culture. And well, actually, he does talk about cancel culture. He talks about cancel culture trying to cancel his books because Huckleberry Finn was just scandalous and could not be exposed to children anyway, so it'd get thrown out of libraries. He said he talks about Huckleberry Finn dragging young souls to hell and all that. So he experienced a little bit of cancel culture. I was watching Archie Bunker the other day, and I was thinking, how is this thing still allowed on? Why do these people not know about this show? But he exists. I think most people get that they're making fun of Archie and all of his views, but man, he just outright says it, and he just blatant is pretty bad. Then Babylon Bee did a YouTube video where this alien comes to Earth. I should put it in the link so you can all watch it, because I shared it with my assistant the other day, and that thing just spread around like wildfire because it's so exact for this environment that I work in. But the alien comes down and he talks about, he's having a meeting with all of the leaders of the world, and they're all introducing themselves with their preferred pronouns, which is he, him, she, her, all that stuff, and the alien's getting confused. He said, I don't understand this he, him, she, I mean, she, he, stuff that you're saying. And they started to explain differences in genders, and he said, well, this is amazing. How many genders do you have? And they all come up with a different number. And and they say it changes every week. And he said, well, that's amazing that you have gotten to a place where you evolve so rapidly. It's just, I'll give you the link. I don't want to spoil it. It's just hilarious because it's the stupidity of our world and the people who have so much power in it. Anyway, I've got to run. Thank you for listening. I'll share you that link. It's worth a laugh, and have a good day. God bless.